We now start talking about water, electrolytes, acid-base balance. This is a big deal. Fluid concentrations and solute concentrations, as well as the electrolytes, have a profound influence on homeostasis. And acid-base, in particular, is one way things can go completely out of control. We'll be looking at that. There you go, Gatorade. It's got electrolytes. So we see now here, we're lucky because on the first day of class we covered all this stuff. So remember, water, it makes up your blood, your tissue fluid, your lymph. It's inside of all your cells. Nutrients and electrolytes move back and forth between various fluid compartments, we call them. So you put fluid in, absorb it into your blood, goes out and, the blood plasma leaks out into the spaces between the cells, becomes interstitial fluid, then taken up by lymph, returned to the blood. So we know all that because we learned all that on the first day of class. You'll go back and review that first PowerPoint. Water balance. So input and output should be about the same, and then that's homeostasis, right? So we know all this already. We covered it on day one. 40 liters for a typical 150-pound male. That's roughly 10 gallons. Remember, I brought in the big 10-gallon cooler. Fluid compartments, we know this already as well. 65%, two-thirds intracellular fluid. Intra means inside of. This is the fluid inside of the cells. It's completely different from all of the extracellular fluid, the fluid outside, roughly one-third, 35%. So most of that, remember, is interstitial fluid, the fluid that's in between cells. It's in the spaces between the cells. And then 8% is blood plasma and lymph. 2% is all the leftover stuff, CSF, synovial fluid, aqueous humor, and so on. This is what surprised me on the last exam. I asked what lymph was most similar to, and a bunch of people said it was most similar to intracellular fluid. And no, intracellular fluid is completely different. Remember, it has a completely different concentration of ions. The ECFs are all similar, and in particular, interstitial fluid, blood plasma, and lymph are the same thing. There's really no difference. Again, plasma leaks out of the blood into the tissues, right? Goes into the spaces between the tissues, becomes interstitial fluid. Is picked up by lymphatic vessels, becomes lymph, and now is returned into the subclavian veins. It becomes blood plasma again. So that's all the same stuff. That's all. Go back and review that first day PowerPoint. This is all in there. So gaining water. Two ways really that you can gain in your total amount of water. You can gain preformed water. That's when you drink anything, any kind of fluids, that's preformed water. I mean, there's other stuff in it, but that's preformed water. And then also the foods as well. You eat something like an orange, that's 90-some% water. I mean, most fruits, berries, apples, everything, that's mostly water. Then there's also metabolic water, which is water you make. So remember all the way back by 156, hydrolysis and dehydration synthesis reactions. So look on the bottom, we got two glucose tied together in a glycogen or in a starch. And then a hydrolysis reaction, hydrolysis, we take away a water. I mean, so what we have to do is we have to use a water in order to break those two molecules apart. That's why, again, you have to have water when you're eating food. So we have to use a water in order to break the two glucoses apart. So we call that hydrolysis. We take away a water. Notice that water ends up on each of the sugar molecules as an OH and an HO. We got an OHO. We got OHO from the water. So, and then dehydration synthesis, the opposite. When you put things together, like when you put two glucose together into a glycogen, you actually make a water. That's metabolic water. You made water. See, you did at least something today. Congratulate yourself. Have a glass of wine. Get more preformed water. Water loss, lots of different ways. There's Anne Hathaway losing water. Nice job, Anne. Way to go. How do you get it out? Well, lots of ways. Urine, feces, expired breath, sweat, cutaneous transpiration. All water leaves the body all those different ways. Cutaneous transpiration means water coming through your skin that you don't really see as sweat, but you're still losing it. It's there. We'll mention that again, I think. Loss varies greatly with environment and activity, so respiratory loss, cold, dry air, heavy activity. That's why when it's cold, you can see your breath. You're seeing water. You're basically breathing out water that's actually forming droplets that you can see. Whenever you work out, when you're breathing heavily, you're losing a lot of water. Not as much as sweat maybe, but you're still losing a lot of water just by breathing. And then sweat, of course, perspiration loss, hot, humid air, heavy activity. See those beads of sweat, you're losing water. And insensible water loss, this is breath and cutaneous transpiration. Again, you're not really aware when you breathe that water is coming out, but it is. And cutaneous transpiration, water is always leaving the pores in your skin, all right? In plants, they call that potential evapotranspiration. You're always losing. You measure it as a ratio of whatever. As relative humidity goes down, you'll have greater cutaneous transpiration. That's why plants and people here in the desert dry out really quickly. Think about that when you see somebody standing outside, like we got those days in June, single-digit relative humidity. Whenever you see somebody standing outside in that kind of weather, just, envision water just getting sucked out of their body, because that's really what's happening. Obligatory water loss, so you have to breathe, you have to you have to allow some to leave through your skin. So roughly 400 mils a day. And then you can go to places like Miraval and they'll pour water on you, and that'll make you feel better about water, I hope. And then, again, roughly a balance. You're getting roughly half as much water from food as you are from drink. Some metabolic. Most of your loss is through urine. Remember, a liter to 2 liters a day, like a quart to 2 quarts of Gatorade. That's how much pee you're making every day. But then you can see you're losing others. The sweat, the cutaneous, and so on. Doctor using a little ruler. That's so cute over there on that, like a dipstick. So, regulating fluid intake. Dehydration. Let's talk about what happens. Dehydration means that you lose water, all right? Now think about this. You're just losing water. We're not talking about solutes. You're not losing solutes here. We're just losing water, all right? So what's going to happen if we lose water? Well, our stroke volume is going to go down, isn't it, right? Remember the factors for blood pressure, and what happens if stroke volume goes down? Blood pressure drops. So when you become dehydrated, you automatically lose blood pressure. You can't help it, remember? That's just basic physics. You're going to lose blood pressure when you lose water. Now, what that's going to do is, because you're not losing solids, that means your blood osmolarity is going to go up. Remember, osmolarity is basically the percent of solutes in a fluid. So if you're losing just water and the solutes are staying the same, that means the solutes are going to become a greater and greater percentage of the total volume that you've got. So dehydration means your blood osmolarity goes up as your blood volume goes down. That's going to promote thirst. I mean, if you're dehydrated, you need to get water into your body. So your body needs to make you thirsty so that you will drink, you dumbass. So stimulation of the thirst center in the hypothalamus. So remember, again, we've got a thirst center there. I don't remember my hypothalamic nuclei anymore. I used to know the ventromedial hypothalamus, maybe, where you've got thirst. So that stimulates, that activates thirst. What's going to be involved here? Well, remember, when your blood pressure goes down, all right, because your stroke volume goes down, because your total volume of water went down, that started the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system into effect, and you produced angiotensin II. Remember, angiotensin II, one of its properties, it works on the thirst centers in the hypothalamus. That's produced in a response to lower blood pressure, but it makes you thirsty so that you'll get more water, therefore your stroke volume goes up, therefore your blood pressure goes up. And then ADH. Now, ADH is a very interesting hormone, and I'm going to keep coming back to this again and again because this is really a big deal. ADH is one of the hormones that can actually control osmolarity. Now, that's like in contrast to aldosterone. Aldosterone can't, because aldosterone is causing you to save salt, and then water follows. So you're moving both solutes and water, so osmolarity is not going to change. ADH changes water alone. So that By changing water alone, you can change the osmolarity, all right, because you can change the relative proportion of fluid to solutes. Hypothalamic osmoreceptors signal response to increased ECF osmolarity. So remember, the hypothalamus can't read the total amount of water you've got in your body. It doesn't have like a dipstick, you know. People know what a dipstick is? You don't, do you? You've never even opened the hood of your damn car. Dipstick, like for oil transmission fluid. The hypothalamus doesn't have something like that. It doesn't have a dipstick for the total amount of water. So what does it do instead? Well, it looks at the osmolarity. It looks at the proportion of solutes. And if it sees the osmolarity going up, it's going, oh my God, we need more water to balance the osmolarity. All right, so that's why it makes you thirsty. And then inhibition of salivation. Look, if you are dehydrated, you don't want to be doing salivation. You're not worried about digestion right now. You're worried about just saving water to survive. So the sympathetic nervous system makes you salivate less in response to a dehydration. Nice chart there on the right, just kind of ties all that together. Go through that. Take a look at that. That's going to talk about stuff coming up on later slides as well. And you see that little chipmunk or whatever drinking Coca-Cola. That would be very bad if you're dehydrated, because that just puts a bunch of solutes in. When you're dehydrated, you just need water. Satiation. So given that you've been thirsty and you're drinking now, how do you know when you've had enough? That's a satiation mechanism. Well, short term, there are a couple of ways. So these are quick acting within 30, 45 minutes. Simply cooling and moistening the mouth will kind of fool you into your hypothalamus into temporarily thinking, oh, okay, we're going to be okay. So medulla, whatever. Like when I was in high school and I did sports in college, there was this myth at the time that drinking water was bad. You would get waterlogged, they said. It's just ridiculous nonsense. Sports is full of so much ridiculous nonsense. But one thing they would let us do is they would let us rinse our mouth with water and spit it out. You see them do that in fights. You see the fighters do that, rinse their mouth with water, spit it out. Yeah, well, it helps with thirst. It doesn't help dehydration. All right. And when you start drinking water, of course, your stomach's going to expand, your intestine expands. That sends feedback, and that lets the hypothalamus know, okay, we're probably getting water. Long term, though, what's the only solution? Well, what's the problem? You can't just treat symptoms. You have to treat the source of the problem. What's the source of the problem of dehydration? Yeah, water, you dumbass. I mean, this is the big red rock eater questions. How long do you cook a 3-minute egg? 3 minutes. Okay. What's the difference between roast beef and pea soup? Anybody can roast beef. All right. So, what's long term? If you're dehydrated, you got to get water, you dumbass. So yeah, rehydration of the blood, that's going to decrease blood osmolarity. So notice once again, does the hypothalamus have a dipstick? No. How will the hypothalamus know? Well, it'll know when the blood osmolarity starts to drop. Okay, see? Stops osmoreceptor response, increases capillary filtration, increases saliva. All right, once we get water in, we can start doing those things again, okay? Nice graph there in the bottom right showing, just the basic relationship. So regulating output, how do we regulate output of water? Well, controlling sodium reabsorption is a big way. It changes the urine volume. So as sodium is reabsorbed or excreted, water follows. So we're basically talking here about aldosterone, right? As we pull sodium in, we pull water in, all right? That's how we control the output. In other words, that will cause us to output less water. We're pulling it from the filtrate back into the blood. That's what aldosterone is doing. By causing you to save sodium, you save water as well, because water follows solutes, okay? ADH, again, what was its big deal? ADH can move water by itself without moving solutes. Therefore, what does it have the ability to do that basically most of the other hormones don't? It can actually change the osmotic pressure, all right? So hypothalamic osmoreceptors, remember looking at osmotic pressure, that's all the hypothalamus can do. So ADH stimulated, part of that whole renin-aldosterone angiotensin system. So we get ADH, and that causes us to start retaining water, and that's going to rehydrate, and also it's going to increase or decrease osmolarity, and then the hypothalamus will know. So how do we do this? Aquaporin channels. Aquaporin, water pores. They are channels that pump water but not any solutes. Now, as it turns out, that's a lie. They do allow some solutes to move through, but they pump mostly water. So renal collecting ducts, all right? So we're going to see that in the kidney. We saw that in the kidney. We saw how in the collecting ducts, we can still, using the aquaporin channels, move sodium but not hold the water back, so therefore we can change osmotic pressure. Slows the decrease in water volume and increase osmolarity of the urine. All right, so nice chart on the right there again explaining all that. So what is the main physiological determinant of thirst? Is it increased dryness of the mouth, decreased fluid in the stomach, increased blood osmolarity, decreased urine volume, or increased absorption of sodium? Pause the video, figure out the answer, take a look. Yeah, remember, hypothalamus doesn't have a dipstick, all right? So it looks at osmolarity, looks at the proportion of solutes in the fluid. If osmolarity is going up, that means we're getting dehydrated. See you next time. And yeah, this is like mid-afternoon. I'm standing on Kanab Point, looking out at, I guess that'd be Great Thumb Mesa out there. Stormy afternoon at the Grand Canyon. It was awesome, as always.